Hey, Magnus here, and Shenmue is only a few days away from getting released. Heck, by the time you see this video, it might be just a few hours. Who knows? I don't know when I'm going to be done recording it, but it's shortly about to come out. But the importance of that launch, it's the first time in 16 years that Shenmue has been released. That's an important date. Magnus here, and if you enjoy these videos, please consider subscribing. I'm going to talk about Shenmue and the importance of casual gamers for Shenmue. The Shenmue HD re-release comes out August 21st. Now, on basically midnight, I'm going to live stream that game so that we can experience it all together and give a quick little review of first impression review, but not a full official review, just a first impressions. I pre-ordered the game, so I'll be ready to go with that. But let's get to the main point of the video. Casual gamers, why will they decide Shenmue and where the franchise continues from here? Shenmue was released in 2000 in North America, and Shenmue 2 was released in 2002 for the Xbox in North America. Now, back then, it was considered a commercial failure, even though pretty much 1 in 10 Dreamcast owners bought it. Advertising back then, in the late 90s and early 2000s, was a different beast. You had online advertising, but the crude videos that came out for Shenmue were few and far between. And then when you're looking at articles, they would talk about the game in depth, and they would talk about everything that the game would feature, which would get hardcore gamers excited. But then you have your casual gamers that are not looking up these type of gaming news and articles on the internet. They'll just play a sports game or whatever, or just play something that interests them and keep it at that. In order to penetrate that audience, you have to get to them, and the only ways you could really get to them, just to catch their attention if they're not looking for it, is through television. Television was a lot more prominent than it is today, so the only commercial that came out for Shenmue was just a quick advertisement when the game was launched.
Who's Nozomi?
Shenmue on Dreamcast, rated T for teen.
And you really had no idea what was going to go on in the game, or the interesting features about the game. So you bought it or you didn't buy it. It wasn't really hyped. Now, you also had the Dreamcast magazine advertising the hell out of Shenmue, getting you pumped. But again, a video game magazine is for a hardcore gamer. So that game still did very well, but it did not make up the cost for Sega. So Sega exited the hardware business shortly thereafter. And Shenmue 2 came out on Xbox, but Xbox had a bunch of distractions besides Shenmue coming out that it really wasn't featured predominantly. And by that time, the graphics on Shenmue were considered not as good as what was coming out on Xbox. So Shenmue didn't get much attention, and Sega, though they tried to spin the franchise in different directions, they really couldn't get the motivation to want to do a third Shenmue or continue this series because they considered it a failure. And if you're going to do a third in the series, the other two were on systems that either didn't support the game very well or were no longer relevant. So it didn't really make much financial sense to continue the Shenmue series going forward for Sega. But then there was a change. You had gamers and the internet start to explode, and you had your hardcore followings of different franchises, including Shenmue, that just built up because they needed to keep the legacy going. And the legacy did go, and then more and more fans, even those that didn't play it on the original consoles, wanted to know what Shenmue was about. So now here we are at a different revolution, a different time, where now the fan base is based off of us older gamers that played it when we were younger, such as myself, or new gamers that are really looking for that niche or that hardcore thing to get into, such as the Yakuza series fans wanting to dip their nose into something else besides Yakuza that follows a similar path. Because if you know anything, Yakuza was actually built upon what Shenmue established early on. You do have your hardcore fans that more than likely backed the Shenmue Kickstarter, which is great, I did as well. But your casual fans are the masses. The casual fans are what determines your success or failure. Because if something gets a lot of hype and gets a lot of advertisement and gets a lot more exposure, especially with the internet as it is today, that we can all get the message out there, such as what I'm doing, you have the ability to penetrate more audiences because audiences are now totally plugged into the internet. And basically Shenmue has the opportunity to have much more exposure. You had one commercial back in the early 2000s for Shenmue, but now you have countless media buzz that support the re-release of Shenmue and Shenmue 3 when it comes out in 2019. So these casual fans, if they buy in, then you have a success. Then Sega will want to push it further and continue the series. However, once the hardcore fans buy in, if we didn't generate enough hype and there wasn't enough hype to be sought after for this game or these series of games, then you have a little issue because hardcore fans need to be able to make up 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 million or maybe even more depending on the costs of these games. And of course, the main challenge has always been for the Shenmue series is to justify the cost in order to continue making the series. So when Shenmue 3 was announced as a Kickstarter and it successfully was backed, Sega can suddenly say, okay, now a re-release makes sense, because they wouldn't do a re-release without actually wanting to continue the series, because what's the point of re-releasing 2 games that are left unfinished? It's almost like it doesn't make any sense, but now it does make sense because Shenmue 3 is definitely happening. The Shenmue 1 and 2 re-release is going to be a testing ground, not just for us hardcore gamers that actually bought it, now I pre-purchased it already, but for those that have never heard into this series and want to get into the series and actually adopt it. So hopefully in the re-release there are enough adjustments and changes, such as what I'm hoping for, and I don't know this for sure, is a time skip mode for Shenmue 1. Now in Shenmue 2, when you needed to wait for a certain event, you could actually hit a wait selection and then it would just wait until that event happened. But in Shenmue 1, you literally had to wait in the passing of time for the next day's event or something else. And hopefully they incorporate that feature from Shenmue 2 into Shenmue 1 to pick up the paces, because everyone who has played Shenmue knows that it starts off very slow, and if it loses your interest, they might lose you forever. It actually did lose my interest at first before I decided to pick it up again and really give it a playthrough, and then that's when I fell in love with the series. So I'm hoping for that, but we'll see what happens when it gets re-released. And those casual fans, if they jump in, they might be the reason why Shenmue lasts beyond Part 3. Now moving on, something else I wanted to talk about is the Shenmue 1 and 2 re-release is going to be the first official time that North American gamers could transfer their save from Shenmue 1 over to Shenmue 2 and continue on with the same items, the same moves that you trained hard for in Shenmue 1, and the same money from Shenmue 1 into Shenmue 2. But could you ever do that on the Dreamcast in North America? The answer is yes. Years ago when I had Shenmue, I bought Shenmue 2, the PAL version, and used a boot disc to start it up on my Dreamcast to be able to play it on my Dreamcast since I didn't have an Xbox. But then I looked up online and found that there were ways to convert the Shenmue 1 save file into a Shenmue 1 PAL saved file, which makes it possible to then continue your save onto Shenmue 2. And the way that I did that was going online through the Dreamcast, uploading the file, converting it, then downloading the file through the Dreamcast, and then continuing from there. That was a lot of trouble. But now there's a different way of doing it, which is basically burning a CD that actually could launch on your Dreamcast as long as your Dreamcast could run mil CDs. And that launch disk, and that disk would then take your save file and convert it into a PAL save file from NTSC. So it basically does what you need on the actual Dreamcast. You could download that file, burn it, and then go from there. Then when you play Shenmue 2, you can start from your NTSC Shenmue 1 save file, and it works flawlessly. I tried it out and I didn't have any issue until my money was stolen later in the game. But yeah, that's it. Give it a try and look it up if you want to actually try that on your Dreamcast, if you still have one, of course. And that's it. That's all I've got for today. Now, I will see you guys on the 20th at night until the 21st to actually play maybe about 20 to 30 minutes of Shenmue HD re-release. Let me know what you guys think, and here's a question for you. What do you think needs to happen in order for Shenmue to continue beyond Shenmue 3? Let me know in the comments down below, and as always, like, share, and you can make my day if you subscribe today. This is Magnus, and I'm out. See you in a couple days. or tomorrow, or today, depending on when I release this video. Take care, guys. See ya.